Hey, it's Mike Brennan, and we're back again with another segment on MITech TV, August 25th. We're recording this. We have the dynamic duo today of Richard Stiennon and Dan Lohrmann, our cybersecurity pros. And I think most people in the tech industry have probably heard of Blackhat. It's an annual event. I think it's in Vegas, right?
That's right.
And I think it was at the Bellagio this year, Carl.
No, no, it's always at the Mandalay Bay.
Ah, Mandalay Bay. Anyway, so it's a bunch of cybersecurity folks getting together, both white hats and black hats. So I wanted to get you guys' impressions of what happened this year. Whoever wants to start first.
Dan, you've written about it. Might as well go for it.
Yeah, tell you, Richard, you great seeing you there as well. I know you were signing books and you were doing a lot of different events. I was as well. I mean, it was a blur, 4 days of constant meetings, very similar to RSA. I did a blog that talked about the differences between RSA and Black Hat, and there's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences. But I mean, AI, stole the show again. Everybody was talking about AI, good, bad, and ugly. A lot of different sessions around that, a lot of discussions, a lot of different products on the show floors, big, display areas. If, people go to that, there's different things going on. A lot of it is around networking as well. A lot of events after hours that went well again. I would say from an AI perspective, love to hear Richard's thoughts, but more and more agentic AI discussions, the ability to do attacks with agents, AI agents. One of the things that fascinated me the most, a lot of discussion around AI and careers, and maybe let Richard jump in here about some of the products. So love to talk a bit more about the people side of this because, quite frankly, a lot of interesting conversations kind of off the record. I can't name names, but from some three-letter agencies and from some pretty big AI companies from Silicon Valley and around the world talking about how this really could change the job market quite a bit in the years ahead, and people talking about maybe hiring freezes and even cutbacks. So, but Richard, love to hear your thoughts about the products, but maybe we can come back and talk a bit about the people side of AI as well.
Yeah, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so my impression was this was easily the highest buzz level for any Black Hat I've ever attended, which is a lot of them. Certainly last year, I thought, wow, it's great. The industry is back. And, it's kind of last year was still post-COVID feel. And this year just built on that. There's a big hallway that you pass through to get from the casino into the conference center. So it's about 50 feet wide. And when the conference part opened up, it was packed solid with humans just for 45 minutes trying to get in. And I'd never seen a crowd like that at any security event. So it was pretty exciting. I think you always kind of feel overlap with any of the news announcements from the previous week. And of course, CyberArk was acquired by, or they intend to acquire, Palo Alto intends to acquire CyberArk. Um, and I forget that was $25 billion acquisition for a company that does 25 billion in revenue. Or no, 1 billion in revenue. So 25x. So that's pretty exciting to everybody in the business because they all imagine selling their companies for 25x.
Yeah, I could sell my company for $25 billion.
Yeah, 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 piece of cake.
Sure.
There were some other, there were some AI acquisitions, Sentinel-1, but prompt security. So there's only been 4 AI security acquisitions to date. And those are pretty good, right? They're big, big bets that go way beyond what the company, probably more than 25x valuations. So that led to the excitement level. As Dan pointed out, man, you walk on the show floor, and even the big old stodgy security companies were leading with AI. So they're big
Yeah.
there's AI this, AI that, and some of these you go, man, really? Do you really have AI, or are you just saying that? And I know I'm suspicious of any company that was in existence before November 30th of 2022. Because if you're talking about how you're AI first or AI native is the term I hear, and you started in 1989, well, how'd you get there? Tell us about the pivot. Don't say that you've been doing AI forever, because you haven't, because you didn't invest the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars it took for the large language models to be developed. Um, on the people side, I see a lot of, if there's hype and if there's a change in the industry, then when there's layoffs and stuff, tech companies just every single time blame that new thing, right? You're getting ready to do it. You've got your whole riff in place and ready to go, and you're sitting around the table with a marketing communications team. And how are we going to explain this to the world? And right now it's, oh, we're going to tell them AI. We got AI, so we don't need these people. And that's just, whenever I see that, Cisco did that. A couple other companies have done that. It's like, no, they're doing a regular get rid of the low hanging fruit of people that aren't producing or whatever. You got to improve profits, standard business practice, and they're just using AI as an excuse. That said, will AI replace jobs? No question, right? First people to go are anybody who makes a living writing words, which is quite all of us, all right? But even that's not true. But what I've actually been focused on is this discussion that consultants and industry analysts will no longer be needed because of AI. And I remember when I first joined Gartner, Google was just getting traction, and somebody wrote an article in one of the journals saying that Google is going to replace Gartner. And so there's a lot of discussion internally at Gartner. It's like, is that really true? And of course, obviously not. Gartner had a $500 million revenue when I was there. Now they're at $6.5 billion in revenue. So they've done extremely well despite the existence of Google and the other search engines. So I don't think that ChatGPT is going to replace industry analysts anytime soon. I think those claims are coming from people who've never interacted or gotten value out of an analyst firm. There's nothing like talking to an expert. Now, there are some advantages to talking to an AI expert, right? Because a AI expert can give you a framework immediately of how to think about a problem, right? It's like, hey, I'm thinking of, acquiring this and combining it with that and doing this thing. Say, well, think about it this way, and it'll line it up for you this way an expert would, an industry analyst. But then you get to the next question down, which is, so how do I do that? How do I put those things together? And it was like, well, first you needed the latest distribution of Linux, and you got to install it on a machine with at least this big CPU. And then you just keep drilling down and down and down to the tiniest, tiniest detail, and the AI will tell you how to do it. Whereas the expert probably has been a long time since they've been hands-on and can tell you, using the latest technology, how to actually accomplish something. So I'm pretty excited by the space.
Yeah, I just jump in. One more quick thing. I'll just on this question, Mike and Matt is some numbers kicking around 65% ish, 70% of code now being written by major corporations by AI. That number heading to north of 90%, 95%. Some people saying, yeah, I don't think you ever get to 100%, but literally 95+% a year from now, pretty much across the board, which for everybody that writes code should be a scary, scary moment. Now, clearly, you're going to need some level of experts to run the models and run the AI. But the reality is that a lot of the roles that we think of and talking to some people who remain nameless, but some pretty big name people in the industry had a chance to talk to at some receptions, and they're really concerned for their next generation. I'm not so worried about Richard and I, or quite frankly, Mike or Matt. People who've been experts in the field for a long time. It's the ones coming out of school now. A lot of them are not hiring. People straight out of school with degrees and a lot of debt, and if they are, being very, very selective. I mean, groups that used to maybe hire dozens or hundreds of people each year, maybe say, okay, we're going to hire two. And just, so then it makes you wonder, where's that minor league system, coming up through, using a sports analogy here, where's that single A, double A, triple A? Okay, now you're a major leaguer. Where are you going to learn those skills, and how's that going to happen? And And so those were some of the concerns. I think I've heard a lot. I heard that a lot on the show floor, way more than I expected. And I think in the cybersecurity world overall, just the ability of agents. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit in some of Richard's items and some other items I have related to that. But the ability of agentic AI to do attacks, also defense. So, in a SOC, those first level analysts, those first jobs that many people are trained, help desk kind of roles moving over to agentic AI. So I think we saw a lot of that at Blackhat.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because the same thing has happened in journalism. There used to be country weekly newspapers everywhere, and people would start at those and then go to the regional daily and then go to a major daily newspaper to become a journalist. And the same thing with television and radio. Well, those newspapers, smaller newspapers, are all dying. None of the smaller news radio stations do news anymore. And a lot of the, small market television stations barely have news. So where are we going to get, our next generation of experts in that field? And the way it's shaken out now is they're basically hiring people right out of college for major metropolitan newspapers and television stations. That the staffs keep getting younger and younger, and there are fewer and fewer of them. So maybe that's going to happen with coders and IT analysts. I really don't know. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys, though, one of the things in the coming out of Blackhat was that there was an incident or some kind of presentation on AI attacking hijacking a smart home and turning off the lights. That was a plot in a memorable episode of Mr. Robot, one of my favorite tech-based TV shows. How worried should we be about that?
Richard, you want to jump in there? You want to go?
Yeah, sure. You should definitely be worried about the disruption, caused by AI misbehaving for sure. But I don't think that AI will be the means by which somebody causes major disruption by taking down everybody's smart home. Right? The attacks will be on the infrastructure, not on the individual smart homes.
Also,
and I think
since we're
some of
on
those headlines are.
Oh, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
I was going to say, I just was reading that dark reading headline. Google Gemini AI bot hijacks smart homes, turns off lights. A lot of demonstrations of that. The Ability Labs and then you're walking around the floor. I know Richard, you saw the second floor. Above the main show floor. There's a lot of dark reading. A number of different companies were doing live interviews with some researchers from Stanford and MIT and a lot of different organizations that they're able to talked about some of their results, where they pretty much any LLM they were able to, large language model that is with AI, able to hack and influence and change the results with different prompts and just a wide variety of techniques that they used, and almost didn't find a way to stop it. So it was kind of scary, these different techniques and these research article papers that are coming out, kind of handing a playbook to the hackers right now, which is a little bit scary. So sorry, Mike, for interrupting.
Well, actually, that is kind of the point I was going to make. I read a couple of the articles, I think it was yours, where you were talking about how in terms of the capture the flag kind of issues, they can crack these things in about 10 or 15 minutes, and when there's a 0-day attack or something, there's no lag time. I mean, if they hit you with that, you used to have the luxury of a few days or a few hours to figure it out. It's not there anymore, right, with AI. Go ahead. I think that was your article, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I think, they do these in labs and they say, Carnegie Mellon and here and there. And so they're not saying that was XYZ hacker group that was doing that to critical infrastructure. But the reality is we know these things are happening. They're going on. And the fact that they're doing it in, university labs and graduate programs, to demonstrate the capabilities is great. But I mean, there's a lot of people standing around listening to these, here's how you can get a copy of the report. And I'm not sure all of them were good guys. I mean, I don't, anybody can go. So It is. I think there's a lot of good news with AI as well. There's a lot of good tool sets that can really automate. I don't want to be all negative. I do think, I think being in this industry, you have to be an optimist. And there are a lot of great solutions and products coming out that really can leapfrog what we've been able to do in the past. I think that just like anything else, and I've said on the show many times, technology can be used for good or for evil, and I think it's being used for both right now.
Matt? Oh, can you hear me, Matt?
Okay, I froze for a second there. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, I'll just cut that out when I edit. So go ahead.
All right, go ahead. Well, I was also wondering, how much we need to worry about, the autonomous attacks that you mentioned in passing earlier, the Carnegie Mellon research.
Yeah, so that's I've been warning about this for, I think I've got presentations ending with the warning going back at least 10 years. And the idea is, hey, that most organizations are building the capability to reduce the mean time before discovery or getting a bad guy out of your network, right? And it's measured in months. It's the average, I think it's 260 some days right now, which is way too long. So just think of that after the automated attacks start, where instead of having days to respond, as Mike just said, you actually have seconds. So there's only one way to counter that is right to have a faster autonomous system responding to these attacks, and as soon as it sees them taking action. Right now, as soon as something strange happens on a network, there's an alert generator that gets sent to the SIM. Now, that's fast, right? That happens right away. But that's along with a million other alerts that have to be sorted and deduped and stacked and put together into a case and then presented to a human. Best case, they'll see it the same day. But by then it'll be way, way too late with automated attacks. Carnegie Mellon was talking about how they were kind of doing the AI is going to tell humans what to do, right? Because AIs weren't very agentic when they wrote that article. Now they are, and researchers just like over the weekend announced that they had just turned an AI onto a server and a network behind it and said, go. And it just figured out how to break in, exploited something, privilege escalation, and then moved on to other critical servers on the network and stole something and exfiltrated it in minutes. And that's what we're talking about. That when that starts happening widespread, an attacker will just have to say, well, today I'm interested in going after Pfizer, and just tell the AI to go get me, the secret formula from Pfizer, and off it goes.
Well, this is in the private setting. What concerns me more is in the nation state setting, because we already know the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans are really good at this stuff. Is this
and the U.S.
a lot better?
And the U.S. Never leave the U.S. out when you.
Oh yeah, the U.S. Yeah.
Guys list all the bad guys, but the U.S. is the best at this, right?
Okay.
And does it. Of course, we don't have evidence because they're so damn good.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're the ones that should be ahead of the game. That's it was kind of interesting for a while. AI research was funded by governments, and they're sitting there. We don't know what they're doing because they're not publicly commenting. But yeah, this is going to be one of the many, many applications for AI for all these agencies.
I think to add to that, I would say that without getting into specifics, we're in an arms race again. Some people call it a cyber cold war, call it different names, different people call it different things, different new terms come up. But I think to Richard's point, the biggest, item that allows me to sleep at night is to know that the U.S., equally, just like we've talked about mutually assured destruction with nuclear weapons for years and years, right? So we know that we're not going to get hit because we would hit them back. And I think clearly there's different people doing different things around the world, but the U.S. does, and our allies in NATO and other countries do have a potent offensive capability, which I would not recommend for anyone watching this show right now to take on your own, unless you're doing it with authorization from the U.S. government at the three-letter agency level. I mean, it's not something for you and I to be doing those offensive attacks, but having that capability, there are organizations in the government, especially the Defense Department, that do have that authorization, and that provides a layer of defense and protection for the U.S. But yeah, both sides are doing it. It is happening, Mike and Matt, and it's happening more and more. As you talk to your colleagues around the world.
And luckily, when you're talking about the great powers, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to have a massive attack to take down infrastructure, communications, power grids, etc. The only reason you would do that was if you're planning on invading. And that's just, no matter what scenario you look at, not in the cards, right? There's projection of power and economic warfare, so maybe you'd want to subtly slow down our ability to produce chips or whatever. But it's not like Russia and Ukraine right now. They have invaded. And so their attacks are exact models of what's going to happen in the future for other countries that are being invaded. So they're kind of, I don't know if we call them small wars or not, because they sure seem huge.
I wanted to ask Dan something he wrote about, getting back to the job market, a term that I had just read just before he wrote about it, which is called quiet cracking. What is that, and how is it affecting the industry?
Yeah, I mean, quiet crack was a new term for me too. We've talked about Great Resignation a few years back on after COVID. Talked about the quiet quitting. Quiet cracking is basically a simple way of thinking of it is you're staying in your job. You feel trapped in a sense. You can't get out. But and maybe with the market the way it is right now, different than it was a few years back where everyone was kind of jumping and getting 10, 20% salary increases by jumping to another job. And so I saw several friends jump every 6 months, and it was kind of crazy. But now the market's definitely tightened up. I think the challenge is, along with the article I wrote about AI anxiety, we can link to some of those. Just people fearing for their work, fearing for the jobs, and there's could be a lot of reasons why. It could be that fear of not getting a better position. Fear of maybe you have certain skill sets that aren't as marketable as they used to be. It could be a management issue. Maybe you just don't have a great relationship with your management, but you feel like you need to just kind of stay. And so there's a lot of that. A lot of people I see out there. I will mention as well, Matt, a little funny story. Let me share this before the time runs out, because I know we're coming to a wrap up here. But at the end of that, I posted this and said, anybody's experience out there on LinkedIn, just getting comments. And I got a few dozen comments from people. And I got one that was written to me, which was not actually from this person, but it supposedly was from Doug McMillan, president and CEO of Walmart. It said, Dan, we've seen your profile. We think you're a great, impressive person, yada, 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 singing my praises. We'd like you to apply for one of our leadership positions. And then they gave a link there, walmart.jobs.hrdepartment@gmail.com, which of course was not real.
That kind of gives it away, don't it? Yeah.
Mike, you click on his profile, and it actually came up with his picture. It came up with all these awards and everything else, but it was a fake profile. I mean, and this was on LinkedIn. This was within the last week. I know they weed a lot of those out. We have friends over at LinkedIn and Microsoft and all that. But this was not the real profile for the CEO of Walmart, which was a different one, which has about 1.5 million followers. But it was a fake profile. I just say that to everyone. It's kind of a funny story, but it's also one that everyone really needs to do their homework out there. If you are looking for a job, or if you're just commenting, or if you're, make sure, one thing that's happening with AI, very practical for all of us, is there's a lot of fake profiles, a lot of fake comments, a lot of fake emails, and more and more and more of that than ever before. And it's easier to do with AI to do, just basically misdirect and use, deep fakes. So really make sure you do your homework. Don't if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And if it's back, replying back to jobs on gmail.com, it's probably fake.
Hmm.
But the good news is, and my recommendation for the day is that you use ChatGPT or your favorite large language model. Make sure you've got a good working relationship with it, so you talk to it every day and it knows something about you and your life. When you get stuff like that, you just pass it off to ChatGPT, and it is a little more objective. It doesn't have anything, doesn't want to be the Prince of Nigeria or whatever. Uh, and it will let you know. And it's amazing. I get some very, very clever phishing attacks.
Yep.
They actually look like they're coming from my email hosting provider's domain. And I grab all the headers and I pass that big block of gobbledygook off to ChatGPT, and immediately just goes through the SPF, the DMARC, tells me it's suspicious, the urgency, call to action. This is definitely something you don't want to click on. I do that every single day. It kind of makes you wonder, how come, the email providers aren't running emails through that to identify spam, because it's doing such a good job.
Hmm.
The other thing I use it for is when your laptop crashes, you can generate a crash report, which you never do because it's just a bunch of gobbledygook, for the developers to debug. You can grab all that, pass it off to ChatGPT, and it gives you tells you what caused the crash, what was operating. Was it memory leak? Was it power something? Usually it says you should probably update your operating system.